Oh, what up? This is David Pixley coming at you live from Aliso Viejo. This is the muzzle. I am Spacey Blur. You are not Spacey Blur. Nuh-uh. Yo, what up? I'm doing another stream. This time I won't get sidetracked and falsely label it my mastering techniques, because I kept getting sidetracked in a bunch of other stuff instead of showing like my entire chain that I normally would like go to and change a little bit here and there, depending on what's needed. But obviously mastering chain is going to change a lot, right? Because you got a whole bunch of tools and plugins. If you don't stick to the same tube emulator or tape emulator, then it gives you a bigger variety of possibilities. Eventually will make you better job. Just change it up. At the same time, like getting to know one tool very well probably makes you more efficient than getting to know like 3 tools like fairly well. And so today I'm going to be spending time learning some new plugins that I got. They're from AirWindows.com, and Chris J is awesome. He's supported on Patreon. His creation of VSTs is supported by people who make donations to him, and then he can give away all these plugins to the public for free. Really cool. And he gives away the source code for a lot of them are open source, and a lot of them that aren't yet open source are going to be. So thank God for Chris J. And personal message from me to Chris J. Thank you, man. The more I like look into the stuff that you're giving me, the more I'm like, wow, that's a pretty big fat Christmas present that you're just like, here you go, world. And the weird thing is not a lot of people know about Chris J and his plugins. Like when I look at YouTube and I see, for example, like he'll release a plugin that's awesome, and then I'll search. Say he came out with a tube emulator that was like the best on the market. He'll get like 3,000 views, and then when you search like the mainstream company and their plugin, which is, you know, is like the competitors of Chris J, and theirs is not as good, they'll have like 80,000 views. Something's weird that with that whole system of marketing and advertising, and who is the leader of certain industries, and like how do they form their monopolies? Is it by offering superior product, or is it because they have some really genius marketing schemes? You know, how much are they paying Google is what I'm asking, basically. And it's kind of strange because sometimes I'll search for stuff on Google and right away I find the correct information. Other times I'll search something and I'll be fed a bunch of bull crap, which is trying to be like they're trying to convince you that it's truthful, and it's bullshit. They're trying to sell you something 9 times out of 10. Otherwise, they're trying to get you to download some app that has a virus. You never know what their intentions are. But so today I feel like I hope my microphone is loud enough. I'm new to streaming with OBS. I'm doing it on multiple platforms simultaneously. So I will be going on to more platforms, but currently I'm just on YouTube and Twitch. So if you're viewing my Twitch, then go to my YouTube. I will check the YouTube every once in a while to see if anybody has left any comments or questions. Essentially what I'm going to do is I have a couple ideas for extremely unconventional ways of using tools that aren't built for mastering in a way that works, or certain combinations of plugins that work together for mastering. And one of my main ideas that I've been thinking about trying to explore for a long time was this BlueCats MB-7. It hosts other VST plugins, and it gives you 7 bands across the frequency spectrum, so you can basically put a broadband VST plugin into whatever specific band on the EQ that you choose. And it has extremely accurate crossover formulas that minimize the amount of bleed through from one band to the other. What I'm looking for currently is basically the BlueCats MB-7 combined with the BlueCats Patchwork, which I'll explain in a second, but using, instead of crossover points with very narrow hues or very steep slopes that separate those bands, and I believe they use some sort of math that tries to cancel out all of the bleed through that you get when you combine those slopes. They overlap, and that adds that little overlapping of audio to your audio. That makes that little section of audio louder than it was in the original recording, and potentially causes problems that most people won't hear. But then you go and start adding harmonic exciters or tube emulators or saturators or whatnot, things that play with even or odd harmonics and add character and tonal quality and etc. Then you end up with something that isn't the perfect thing. So what I want is basically the same thing, but implementing true brick wall filters to separate the bands. And I want the brick wall filter to separate the bands before the processing of VSTs within the bands, and then again after the processing of the VSTs, because with some VSTs, if you apply a VST to like this chunk of the frequency spectrum, like depending on what effect you're adding, it might add some kind of something that's outside of that spectrum, either low or high. Like for example, some reverbs will do some weird stuff, and obviously saturators play with those even and odd harmonics, so it's adding stuff. So basically I want, if I'm going to apply saturation to this chunk, then I want it to, outside of that band, not add anything, 0. So I want that, and I want it to be perfect. I've got some other ideas for plugins that would be fun and neat, but so down the road I might train myself how to make VST plugins, and thanks to Chris J, that's given me inspiration, because he's giving away source code for things that he's implemented, and a lot of them are quite genius. A lot of them are better Like a lot of his stuff, honestly, is replacing things that are like from waves or ozone, and not just like competing with, not like the same quality. It's like, here's better, and here it is for free. And I think maybe the fact that it's free makes people kind of think that maybe they're not as badass as they seem. But if you understand science and math at all, or if you have like any grasp on things, and when he explains it to you, even if you don't completely understand it, I mean, it makes sense. Although most of the algorithms and stuff that these companies that are leading the industry are putting out, they don't give out their algorithms, obviously. A lot of the times they'll even frickin' copyright an algorithm. It's like, how do you own a piece of math that's just true? For example, like I tried to find alternatives to the Waves Audio Max Bass plugin, and what it does and the way it does it is it's the only thing on the market that does exactly what it does. And they went and got a patent on what it's doing, and it's like, what? Like, that's just possible to do with science, and how do you own that? Like, that's bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, alright, anyway, that's just my silly little opinions on stupid stuff. So here's my DAW. I use Ableton Live. Again, I am David Pixley of themuzzlemastering.com. You can find me on Facebook as The Muzzle Mastering. You can hit me up on my channels. If you're interested in hiring a mastering engineer, keep in mind I do digital mastering. I don't have a bunch of really expensive analog equipment. Like Sergio just messaged. 12-inch clitoris, he says. A demo of, okay, that's nice. Thank you, Sergio. I'll tell him that I thanked you in my live stream just now. For the link. I would explain to you guys more about what the link is, but not an adult rated site as of now. So we'll just keep it PG for you guys. So I'm basically going to start building some things from scratch. And I'm going to push this track from Quasar to extreme levels of way too much saturation and clipping and stuff like that. And then I'll try to find some sweet spots after I do some obnoxious things. So, the first thing that I think I want to do is load up. Oh wait, that's the wrong. He sent me a newer version of this track. So let me pop that in. And I know I had that loaded on a different Ableton project, but when I load an Ableton project, it takes a minute or two. The computer just takes that long to load a project. Where is it? Hannah Montana fix. Here we go. And I will try applying crazy combos of effects on other plugins from other artists as well. In fact, maybe I could focus on one of Quasar's other tracks. I've already been doing this one for a while, but take my sweet ass time on mastering it. Because I'm looking for different methods that, of course, if anybody knows how to do mastering engineer and they see me doing some things that I'm going to do, they're going to be like, no, that's not how you master stuff. And then I'll say, I know. And then they'll say, no, you're wrong. Seems like I keep running into people that keep saying that, and yeah, I understand, but that doesn't mean I can't experiment. No way I'm going to find some new crazy idea and implement it and then show it to people and say, hey, check it out, this works. And they'll be like, what? No, you're stupid. And then they'll listen to it and be like, whoa, it works. So that's basically what I'm looking for. Is some secret sauce tricks. Every once in a while I find something and then I hold on to those little secret sauce tricks, and a lot of people, when I show them to them, they're like, huh? So I'm gonna load up BlueCats Patchwork, and then I'm gonna put instances of BlueCats MB-7 into Patchwork, so that way I can have a bunch of MB-7s being processed in parallel. And awesome thing about a lot of these AirWindows plugins is, since they're not using a window that's graphically intensive or anything, I can load up a lot of plugins without driving CPU, and the math that's involved in a lot of his plugins is as simple as possible, and it sounds better than all these complicated algorithms that they do some really complex, and then they have to do something else with math to cancel out the bad things that happen by those processes, and you just end up with things that are way too complicated, and there's still something bad that exists there, whether you can hear it or not in most cases. Well, if you're doing something like what I'm wanting to do, is put a bunch of plugins in. Essentially I'm looking for mixing techniques as well, although I'm practicing applying this stuff to full mixes. There's some tracks from Gene Berlin as well that he uploaded, like 1-minute snippets of some of his songs that are coming out on his next album that I'm mastering. I don't know exactly what those little snippets are though, so I'm kind of hesitant to just put his tracks into this and then start putting crazy effects on them. But I also have this track from MNNI 417, and that one's real awesome too. This one is gospel rap. Basically, it's Christian gospel rap, and if you like rap, then you'd probably be like, oh, well, that's whack. But this dude's awesome. So if you like rap, wait till I bust that out. And these ones, you're probably either gonna like them or hate them. It's like very much dubstep influence, kind of trap, West Coast bass type of sound. And he gave me permission to basically go towards the loudness wars and try to slam the hell out of things, and also add as much character as I want to stuff. So basically he gave me permission to use saturation to the extreme, and clipping, and whatever else I can find. And I know as a mastering engineer that the act of processing in parallel is not something that you would do conventionally for mastering. But I've been thinking about it for a while, and for example, if like I have two different like tube emulators, they both sound different, and they sound good in sequence, like, but I want to hear them. And I mean, if I'm using 2 or 3 of them, then instead of like the 18% mix, you know, I usually, if I use 1, I try to barely touch it with the saturation, depending on the material. If I'm using 3, then obviously I got to divide what I would do with 1 by 3, or make it even smaller than that in a lot of cases, because, you know, if you're like doing stuff to the even harmonics with 1, and then you're doing stuff with odd with the tape, and then you're doing stuff with even and odd with something that's like a warm digital type of thing. It all depends on what you're doing, but combinations can turn out to be better than just using 1 plugin. Even though by using just 1 plugin, there's less math that goes on and processing, that in that way you probably will get a better result that way, maybe 9 times out of 10 at least, because the less you do, the better when it comes to mastering. But and this is as I'm trying to be creative with trying to find something that people would say is just stupid, and then but some people who like this music will be like, damn, that's tight, you know. That's hopefully what happens. Thought I loaded up this. Here it is. I think to avoid confusion, I'm gonna put all this stuff onto 1 track. That way when I want to process stuff on these other tracks just to hear a different sound, then I can do that. I'm gonna save this because I did look for some techniques at some point I was just trying different random ideas, and usually when I try to get creative and look for different weird ways of doing things, you know, usually I expect it to not sound as good as what I would normally do, so that would be failure. I'm expecting failure, but I'm not always, like, I know there's a chance of something being more badass than what I would normally do. It's all about spending the time and trying out things that people wouldn't try out, and then sometimes people will argue that no, that doesn't sound better, but they're making that argument only because they heard what you're doing, not because they're actually like truthfully hearing something bad within it. And a lot of engineers that are experienced they'll get butthurt. They'll be like, "No, that sounds bad, man. No." And they're like saying that based on like the processing that you did, instead of because they have learned that that's the wrong way to do things. And so the thing about math and science is can always be proved wrong with something that is more correct. That's my opinion. I think it's a fact. I think math and science, like the truthful laws of the universe, can change depending on some factors that we don't understand currently. That's just a really strange theory, and I'm not saying it's true, but You know, for example, Einstein's theory of relativity we knew to be true for a long time, and then something comes along and they're like, oh, actually it's almost true, but actually it's false. But or maybe, yeah, they disproved it. They proved it's like almost true, something like that. I don't remember. I could be wrong about that too. Maybe I saw fake news. And that's another thing is sifting through a lot of misinformation is fun, but funny thing is sometimes misinformation can actually turn into the truth. So somebody could post something false on purpose, and then a bunch of people think it's true, so they post it, and then all of a sudden everybody's posting it, and then once enough people believe it, whoa, just flipped. Like all of a sudden everybody believes it, and it becomes true sometimes, or we're all just jaded. So I'm gonna check YouTube and see if there's comments. I'm currently unable to check the Twitch chat, so I apologize if you're in the live chat and you're saying something and I'm not responding. Just FYI, my YouTube is linked from my Twitch account, so you can go there on a different tab. Maybe you want to watch on Twitch because it streams at better quality, but every time I try to go to my channel and go to my live feed, I have to go through this. Kind of phone illiterate. So I've been doing some streams for the last couple days, and had a couple of views, but I am new to this, so I didn't really expect a lot of views. But I'll go ahead and make a comment in the YouTube. If you have any questions about something technical that's about mastering, or why the hell I'm trying to do something that seems completely wrong in a manner that is essentially looking for something that actually works, even though it's wrong. I'm just going to delete. If you have any questions or comments, please make a post during the live feed. If you have any questions or comments, please make a post during the live feed, and I will interact with your comments as I see them. Oh, I see I'm signed in as the muzzle on my phone, or the muzzle mastering. I made a sub account that ultimately, or eventually, I'm going to develop that channel and do the mastering streaming on that one, and try to keep that for just tutorials. And then my David Pixley the Muzzle account will be for all my experimental strange stuff. But my mind wanders and I have ADD, so I kind of just do whatever I feel like doing in the moment. So sometimes my titles of my streams are like, this one I'm looking for experimental methods, right? I've just been talking about crap so far. So then this, let's see, first I'm going to maximize the amount of columns and rows. Basically I want to do as much as I possibly can. And most people who do a lot of processing with mixing and DAWs do a lot of complicated things, but I'm trying to go to the extreme stupidity, but I'll probably maybe find like one thing that really works out of 8 chains after tweaking them several times. But if I can find like a bunch of parallel ones that work with this pre and post processing, and then with multi-band control, like that's a lot of things going on. A lot to think about. Oh wait, I wish you could just drag those in. So I go load VST. Actually, you know what? I don't think I want to put MB-7 as my first thing. Maybe I'll have 2 things before it and 3 after. Had my phone vibrate? Somebody leaving a chat? No? Thought my phone did something. Oh, I think maybe it did that because Sergio's talking to me. So big shout outs to Sergio Blue, because he's a fool and he raps. Gotta give him daps for that. You know what though? Because I did this for a few hours earlier while I was streaming. Never took the time to how to set default VST folder within BlueCats. What is it called? Patchwork. Patchwork. And I had been thinking about doing stuff with this Patchwork and MB-7 together for years. And I did do stuff with my MacBook Pro while I had it, and I basically got to the point where, okay, I've put in so many plugins and it's not my vision yet, and it's already maximizing the CPU. But really what I want is so you can have within this Patchwork, you can have 8 times 8 64 plugins inserted. Now within this MB-7, I believe you can have like 3 or 4 per band. That's 21. Now say you put a Patchwork in one of the bands in the MB-7. I mean, that's infinite, and it's going up very fast. But that's a lot of stupid shit going on. Unnecessarily too much. That's the whole point. I can think a lot more clearly when I'm not talking about what I'm doing. Maybe I'll talk less. BlueCats Patchwork. Wait, is it in here? Reset. Should just be the DLL here. Oh, here we go. Wow, this is complicated stuff. System of folders and stuff. Guess it would be a utility? No, yeah. Is that DLL file? I want to search. It won't show me this in Explorer, really. Well, I just installed that dang multi-band processor. To figure out where I installed it, I'm pretty sure I directed it to the correct directory. I might have to restart my computer, that would be crappy. So, you know, I found this AirWindows stuff 2.5 weeks ago. It can take a while to learn everything to the extent of like maximizing the amount of things I can do with them. That was one of the things about having the Wave plugins back when I had them. So many things that, you know, I only knew how to use like 7 or 8 of them that I kept going back to. I would try to learn the other ones, and I wouldn't go back to them, and then, you know, essentially I had like thousands of, or over 1,000 plugins that I could only use, like effectively use like 1% of them. So kind of overwhelming when it gets to that level. But I mean, that's not to say that the quality of the plugins is not great. Like, say for example, one company releases a compressor that, like, a whole bunch of people, like a whole bunch of people with educated opinions say, this is the best compressor, my favorite compressor. When that happens, they just release one plugin, they make a lot of money. You know, then they release a few more. But when you have like over 100 plugins, it's like, that might also make Chris J look less appealing. The fact that it's free and there's a bunch of them probably makes people question whether it's even worth like trying them out, because the majority of free plugins are not super high quality. Like, they're not competing with the companies that are charging $80 for a plugin. Not competing with Ozone and Waves and Voxingo and all these. I don't know how much Voxingo stuff costs, but anyway, going off on tangents. So basically, I mean, if you like free tools, and especially ones that are better than what you pay $100 for per plugin, and then go check out AirWindows.com, and if you can afford it, then start supporting him on Patreon. He gives these things to the world, and then people give him cash, and that's how Patreon works, and it's pretty neat. And he's giving out his source codes, and he tells you what goes on within the plugins. He doesn't tell you some shady ass stuff that hides what is actually happening. Like, I searched and searched and searched for like what is happening in Ozone's mbit plus dither. Why is it better than all the other dithers? Well, they don't tell you. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like the same dither that your DAW is doing. I mean, actually, I know that is great high quality dither that they use some kind of crazy math to pull off. But the thing about math and science and technology is no one person should own something just because they realize that it's possible and then pulled it off. Especially in the digital world, the software, like, no, you don't own like how you, or okay, you built the software. That doesn't mean somebody else can't do it too. Like, why don't you give out your algorithms to other people who develop similar products, so that we as a world get better faster at what we're doing. And that's kind of what, in my opinion, like what Chris J is doing, is it's expanding our capabilities fast, and it's like speeding up the rate of the speeding up of the rate of how fast we are growing with the development of VST plugins, because he's giving it out to everybody else who can make VST plugins, or basically implement the math that he comes up with in different creative ways. It just makes us develop them faster and better. So if we all shared our secrets, then we could be better as a whole, which would make it easier for musicians to make better music, and engineers to have better tools to use. it's all around just awesome. So hopefully Patreon is able to keep that thing going. I would guess that like companies that are, you know, trying to have the market cornered, they're expensive ass plugins, and you know, people pirate their plugins all day long, or they have some kind of crazy security to actually keep it protected, and you know, they're charging $200 for a plugin. They're saying this is the best one. It does all these things that you can't get from other plugins. Well, I think that's just stupid. Anyway, I should have said in the title, going off on tangents. I seem to do that a lot. So these are some of the ones that I just spent some time like watching his videos and reading on his website about what stuff is and trying to grasp within my own mental limitations and bad ability to read, grasp some kind of idea of what things are. So I have a list of things that I want to try out, and what I really should do is like read about it, watch the video, and then try to like load that plugin up immediately while it's fresh in my head. Like for example, this 2 vinyl 4, there's going to be a knob or two on there that I don't recall now that it's been a few hours since I learned it. I'm going to have to go back and be like, what does that knob do? You know. So when I actively learn stuff when I'm not streaming, I'm constantly Googling stuff. I'm constantly on YouTube. I'm constantly looking at forums. I'm doing everything I can to gather information. And the fact that I'm able to find the information pretty fast whenever I need it also allows me to not store the information in my brain. I don't have to remember everything. And that kind of sucks. But it is what it is. So basically, once I start doing so many processes that my CPU is pushed to the limit, then I won't be able to open my browser. I'm guessing it's in this manual somewhere. Save favorite plugins and settings and reload from menu on Mac. Maybe this. So basically, every time I went to add a VST, it was loading up the wrong folder. I would have to back up, go to Steinberg, like navigate to it, and every time I had to do that navigation, it took an extra amount of time. So now I'm going to try to figure out how to set the default folder. Oh yeah, you can do automation on the hosted VSTs within the BlueCats stuff. Awesome. Here you can use automation plugins. Blah blah blah. Oh, here we go. Save favorite plugins and settings and reload from menu. Oh, you can save their configuration to reload directly from the plugin menu. Okay, this is the info that I want. When I was trying to show off like some of my mastering methods and also show off some of the new some of the new things that I tried since I found AirWindows that might not be the best methodology, but seemed to work at the time, unless my ears were tricking me. My client seemed happy, so that's good. I had a guy come in and watch for a couple hours and tell me that I was wrong about several things that I was doing. But he did help me fix my OBS situation, which I'm new to OBS. I can use all the help I can get. And yeah, I think my mic is not set up perfectly, so let me try to fix this noise gate so that you can understand me. So so it should open up sooner, right? It should be like closer to there. Then it's going to pick up more background noise, and there's background noise because I'm outside. So either way, eventually I'll find the optimal setting for streaming outside. And every time my chair makes a noise too, or if I hit the space bar, wow, that clipped. Dang. So then in that case, I'm going to slam this compressor. And I'll do a smaller amount of gain. Wow, that clips like a mofo. Sorry if that hurt your ear. Get my microphone situated. So let's go ahead and slam this mic a lot more. It might sound bad, and I won't know until I go back and listen. I'm going to slam it more, but it's not going to slam it until it gets over a louder value. Yeah, that's going to clip no matter what. I'll just try to avoid hitting the space bar like I normally do. Since everybody's mic is different and setting it up is different for everybody, otherwise I would just copy what other people did. Yes, from plugin menu. Okay, so I'm going to have to load the plugins first and then so it'll save the settings within them. But how do I just save the default VST folder? Why is it pointing to the wrong VST folder? Yeah, see, that's kind of whack. I think it points to the wrong folder by default. But it has built-in effects too. Has a bit crusher. Oh, you can load in Patchwork like that. So I don't have to navigate to Steinberg folder every time I do that. Oh, I would be loading a Patchwork within a Patchwork, basically. What is stereo strip? And mid-side encode and decode. So all of that basically splits it into two channels, mids and sides, and then puts it back together, I'm guessing. So let's check out the stereo strip. I'm curious. X talk. Oh, so this is just a stereo imager, it looks like. Oh, and side shaper. It looks like that's all that is, which can be handy because you can split it into left and right, process them differently, and then sum them back together. I think I read in the forum briefly that somebody was talking about that. Splitting the signal up, processing it differently, and then summing it back together. Which is fucking awesome. So, oh, you can blend in the clean as well. And I believe this is a pre-drive right here. So that's before it goes into this pre-section, and then the pre-section gets fed into these 8 rows, I mean, and they get processed in parallel, and then it can either average them together, so basically it puts them all together to where it won't get super loud, and it does it in a way so that they're all kind of equal loudness, which is pretty neat. Or you can sum them, which in that case you're in charge of the gain knobs, which is also cool. And what is that? Oh, that's to mute it. This is to solo it, and here's your gain. I wish that this gain let you double click it. Oh, it does. Set it to 0, and that's unity gain. Oh, exclusive solo mode is off, which means that if I hit the solo button on 2 of them, it solos both of them. I think exclusive solo mode would be like, meaning it would make it to where like the last one you pressed is the only one soloed. I'm not sure on that. I did know how to use this a lot better like 3 years ago or something. It can do a lot of awesome stuff. And within Ableton Live, this is probably the best way. There is some other plugins that do the same thing. I don't know if they do it better as BlueCats Patchwork. And I'm going to do a bit of research and find the best one eventually, but where is it? So, I think I heard good things about this plug Bidual, but I also heard good things about the DDMF meta plugin. But I also heard some bad things about the DDMF meta plugin, but I think that was just for Pro Tools. It had some kind of glitches and didn't work correctly in Pro Tools. I don't know if that's old information or not. I also had seen some information in 2017 saying that BlueCats Patchwork was a mess at that time, but I think they came out with an update after that, or they did in 2018, and they didn't explain what was wrong with it either. But this DDMF, I read about it on their homepage, and it said a lot of really neat things, like it takes a side chain, it has 4x oversample, it gives you the option to split up to 4 bands, so it does the patchwork and it can split the bands, and it does that with narrow, curved, slope, or fast sloping curves, so that there's the minimum amount of bleed through in between the bands, which is essentially, you know, close to what I would like as a tool, but I want a brick wall filter that separates the bands perfectly, before and after the processing of the VST plugins within the bands. I basically want the perfect like version of like all the best I'm sure each of these have different features that make them different in certain ways. Probably none of them are better than others, but I think this may be the chainer is the weaker link of them. I think this may be Audio Vitamin. Contra is also not as good as the Patchwork, and probably a lot of people say Patchwork is the best. Some people say Meta Plugin, and I'm not sure if I recall correctly, but I thought I remember hearing a lot about BidDual. Another thing that might help this situation is it might work better, and it would do it outside of the DAW, and it would send it to the DAW. What's the name of that plugin? I'll remember, hopefully. It was called, there was one that a friend of mine told about me, one of my super audio geek friends. I can't recall what it was called. But yeah, I should look into that one too. So I've got a lot of research to do. So I can create subfolders, so I can like save a bunch of different presets of, for example, FabFilter Pro Q2 if I want. That's cool. Essentially, I could load up a plugin, go to their default presets, and then save them within directories within the Patchwork plugin. It's obviously going to take quite a bit of time to build up Patchwork to where it is really functioning in an awesome way. And I likely will never be able to get it to work in mastering audio. Like, the process of mastering is usually just a bunch of effects in sequence, and it's usually just a very small amount of polishing that finalizes the track. But in some cases the mastering engineer is asked to do more processing than the normal typical mastering would be, and I'm lucky enough to have been asked to do that recently, which gives me the opportunity to learn all these AirWindows plugins in an extremely fun and exciting way, looking for different crazy experimental techniques that sure most of them don't work, but I'll probably find some magic sweet sauce somewhere. So yeah, it will take forever to save a bunch of presets within Patchwork. And I think the downfall of Patchwork when compared to Meta Plugin is and BidDual. Meta Plugin uses less CPU, I heard, which for me that's probably going to be an issue that will cause me to move to BidDual. Just the fact that I want the CPU to be implemented. I want the least amount of CPU usage possible. So I'm going to have to look for a lot of information that compares these plugins. So actually it might not even be worth my time to start building up Patchwork unless I know I'm going to stick with it. but I kind of wanted to stream and just show you like some of the stupid ideas that I've had, and also just do random stuff. So let's do that for a minute. Since I didn't name the stream, that's something like that. So before Patchwork, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to AirWindows. And I'm going to load up the From Tape plugin. Actually, I could just put that on this pre. Yeah, that would be better, because when you load them in BlueCats, it gives you these knobs, which are easier to adjust as compared to the sliders that you have to use in Ableton. Are kind of inaccurate and not the easiest to pinpoint to the best precise value that you want to set it to. I think with the knobs, it actually you can adjust it in smaller increments if you hold shift, I believe. And you can do that on the Ableton sliders, but those small increments are bigger with the sliders. The disadvantage of using the BlueCats is then you have a bunch of windows, which probably uses some amount of the graphics processing, which probably affects the CPU as well. So this is just going to take some time. I'm going to have to keep going to the dang Steinberg folder. Gotta be a way to change their thing so that it targets that correctly, and I'm guessing it has to do with the extremely large system of folders that is in that BlueCats VST folder within the VST plugins folder. It's probably somewhere in the resources, no, presets, model. No, I see. I don't know much about this and how it's set up, so I'm not gonna like just stumble around and look for stupid things. Start implementing what I had imagined. My From Tape plugin, I have a feeling that this plugin is going to become something that I put on the beginning of every track in my mixes, or at the end of like at the end of the list of VSTs on every one of my tracks in my mixes, and then also on the master bus. I have a feeling that I'm really going to use this one a lot, because it's extremely subtle in that it uses some math that is possible in the digital world that you can't get with analog hardware. Sounds a little bit like the analog stuff, but does less, and then it does some digital things that make it better, and it does very little, but whatever it does, I haven't heard it sound bad yet, unless of course you push it way too loud, but pretty much sounds good every time so far, which hasn't been the case for other tape plugins. They usually have a tons of knobs and buttons, and you have to configure the hell out of them to find a sweet spot. This one, you just load it up, turn two knobs, and don't even turn a knob, it's already on the sweet spot. And that's cool. That's my opinion of From Tape. 2 Tape is also pretty awesome. Let's so I can save this. Let's figure out how to do this. Save as, presets. Save preset as. I wonder what center editor is. And then there's a parameter map. Oh yeah, I can basically use automation or a MIDI controller to control different parameters on any of the plugins that are anywhere within here, which is freaking awesome, isn't it? And what's this audio in out? Okay, I'm sure that's probably what it's supposed to be, right? Okay, yeah, that's... Learn mode. Learn mode might be something like it learns what it's doing. Like if you press play and then you start tweaking a bunch of knobs, it might learn like what you're doing and draw in that automation. That's what it could be. You get a dry wet. Output mapped to control 1. Okay, what is control 1? So that's somewhere within my MIDI. So I would need to have a MIDI controller to implement that. Making my own music again, which is in out. Not sure what this crosstalk thing is. I tried to load this. Oh wait, what happens if I go to crosstalk? What's it gonna want to do? I'm guessing that lets two plugins talk to each other somehow. So there's a lot to figure out with this plugin. Oh, you can link the pre and post gain knobs. That's cool. So let's just show you what that would do. Turn that on, then when you turn this pre knob up, wait. See, when you turn this pre, which happens before the pre-sequence of effects, then it automatically turns down the output gain, which a lot of plugins like tape emulators have that built in. It just makes it to where you push the drive in the beginning, then it lowers the output, which gives you basically unity gain, depending on, like, keeps the level to where when you push this way up, you can still distort it without the audio actually getting so loud that it kills your ears. You can MIDI learn any of these things too. Oh wow. Wow, this is very configurable. You can flip the phase. Look at that. You can flip the phase on every on each of these columns. You can flip the phase. That is so useful. Oh, and you can set the maximum, and you can set the so when you adjust this post gain, you can set this to -60, so that when it's turned all the way down, it's minus 60. It's by default -40. This is like super highly configurable. Like a lot of credit and big shout out to BlueCats. Like this is a freaking awesome thing. I don't think a lot of people are really implementing it because it's so dang complicated that to get it to do something that sounds great is going to be difficult and a lot of work. But if you do, it'll be totally worth it. But you'll spend a lot of time doing it. I mean, look at me. Good thing that Alt plus double click sets it to 0, so at least the knobs work pretty well. I always like my knobs and sliders and stuff to be smooth. So what's this? Preferences. Oh, here we go. Default, these found it. I'm glad I was just like kind of aimlessly trying to discover every little button and knob that I'm looking at here. So user VST plugin directory. That one's set correctly. Well, obviously, I'm gonna set that one to the one that I use. I'm so glad I found that. I wonder why when I Googled it, it didn't just pop up. See, like, those search engines need to be more accurate. I think they purposely don't give you the information you search for. Or they like remove stuff that's posted in like, I bet that was posted in like 2001, and they just take it off the Google search. Like, oh, it's old. Like something's been wrong with my ability to find information that 3 years ago I could find a lot easier. It's made it to where I spend more time doing those searches. There's other stuff that pops up that is not what I'm looking for, even though I'm like I accurately search for what I'm looking for. Those are some complaints, Google. Fix your damn algorithms. Stop spamming us and wasting our time. Okay, so I'm like kind of mentally exhausted, so just navigating to a folder is difficult. Could have even set the AirWindows as my default, but no, that's alright. Restore plugins editors on open. I think I might have had an issue before when I configured this to where sometimes it would reset. Like I would save this huge file. I think this happened, if I remember correctly. And then when I loaded my Ableton project up again, some of the VSTs basically loaded up in default bypass mode with like all the settings that I configured gone. So I guess I'm going to have to spend the time to save a bunch of presets within the Patchwork plugin, especially if that does happen again. I'm pretty sure that did happen. It might have only happened with AAX files. I forget, because I think that was like one of the reasons why I started using Patchwork in the beginning, was because there was a plugin that I couldn't use in Ableton. I think it was back when I was using like Ableton 6, like it was a long time ago, so I don't remember correctly. But if I do this, then the plugins editors will always on top. I think that might be useful, because when they're not, every time I click around, they're like, they disappear, and then I have to click again, and then I have to click again. So let's see if that makes my workflow a little better. Restore plugins editors on open. I'm not sure exactly what that does. Time to go to the manual. I wonder what my CPU is pushing at, and I wonder the quality of my, does the quality of my mic suck? Is anybody watching? Can you leave a comment? Please leave a comment and let me know if my mic levels suck. Actually, I think I can figure that out myself. The plugins editors will always on. That might be when they're not. Every time I click around, they're like. And by the way, there's like at least a 60-second latency. I think I configured my OBS to. I actually added a delay, an extra delay, just because I didn't want to push my Wi-Fi as much as I was, and I didn't want to. I was basically trying to configure OBS in a way that the stream quality isn't totally horrible, but it's not using my CPU that much. And I got it to where it's only using like 9% CPU now, 8%. It was using like over 30%. So I lowered my video resolution and my FPS, and I did some other things that hooked that up, and then so that way I should be able to do more within Ableton without pushing the CPU so much. And I just did that after the last time I streamed. Like the last time I streamed, it was bad, so I deleted the saved video. I went back and pressed playback, and turned out I had streamed for a long time. I wasted a lot of time talking because my mic wasn't set up right. So that's something I gotta keep worrying about, and I gotta go back and listen to the videos and see if the mic sounds like shit or if it sounds okay, and then eventually I will get it optimized, and I can move on to things that are more important, like loading a million VSTs into Patchwork. And I think maybe instead of doing this while I'm streaming, I might have to be able to focus on this without talking, because when I'm talking, then I'm kind of going all over the place. When I really focus, I'm not talking. Show controls setting. Plugin menu. That'll be where my presets are. Oh, there's some global settings. Oh yeah, I was already looking at that. Output data refresh rate 50 Hertz. I'm thinking that might have to be tweaked depending on the DAW or what. Control input. Is that lagging? Oh wow. So I'm still having some issues of lag within my DAW. Oh, so this, I can tweak the controls on basically everything within this plugin. Let's see what, there's an undo and redo. It probably lets you do that several times. I can load up the manual. I'm going to obviously want to read that. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Oh yeah. I wonder if it resizes all of the VST plugins or if it just resizes this main thing here. I think it's lagging because I have this preferences open. I just clicked on close and it's like stuck. So okay, so it only changed this, which I had an issue using it during my last stream, which I deleted because it was, the microphone was messed up. Like this window was too big. Once I had like 12 or 20 plugins loaded up, like, okay, for one thing that I got to gripe about is like every time I click on my DAW, these would go away. Okay, so I just fixed that by saying these are always on top. I can still minimize it, and then when I click here, then I can click here and I can click show editor if I need to load it up. So once it's minimized, it's minimized. Can't get it from the taskbar, obviously. You know what I think I want to do is load up that other, I wonder if I saved it as an audio rack. I could show you like my, I think I saved this mastering start rack as my default that I was going to keep using, but I might have done that after discovering AirWindows, and I think a couple of the things I did with the AirWindows stuff can be improved. I might have done a couple of things not in the best way. Like I didn't save that experimental rack, but it's somewhere in one of these Ableton projects. I thought it was in that one. That's the one that I loaded up and I didn't see it right away. Question. I think my ability to stream is maybe not the best, not only because I'm tired, but I'm not used to doing this. Reload program from menu. Next time you want to load this configuration, use the select menu. Okay, blah blah blah, I already knew that. One thing to mention is that when I was using a Mac, I'm not sure if this is the case with AAX files for PC, but I believe, I could be mistaken, but I believe that AAU or AU files on a Mac would use the hard drive instead of the CPU, and one of my friends who knew his stuff really well convinced me, like, hey, there's this way to use the AU files so that you can ultimately have more plugins actively running without the CPU going to 100%. As long as you're not then pushing the drive to go to 100%, then you're okay. So that would make the hard drive share the load of all that processing. Pretty sure it was the hard drive that did it and not the RAM. I could be wrong about that as well. But yeah, there was some way to basically get more by using the hard drive to process the stuff. I guess because the AU stores the data onto the drive. I don't remember like the difference there, technicalities. So those are my preferences. So that seems all good. Get the manual. I need to read that. And I can adjust the zoom. What I wish it did is change the zoom of all of the plugins that it loaded. So then, like, for example, you could resize your plugins that wouldn't normally be resizable. That would have been awesome. Probably not possible. Because then it would be trying to alter the code of the other plugins. Oh no, it looks like it did. Oh wait, no, this is this. Well, let's just load up a FabFilter Pro Q2 just to see if it's larger. Or I mean, I could load up any VST at this point. I don't want to use the AirWindows as an example because this relies on BlueBand or BlueCats to give it this window. And within Ableton, you don't get this. These sliders are smooth, and I noticed when I was using these knobs, when I was using the sliders that Ableton gives you, sometimes like the parameter name would be different in Ableton. And I read on AirWindows website that Chris J said that he and BlueCats worked together in great detail to make sure that all of his plugins worked and all of them had the correct names on their parameters. And some of the sliders would go from like one setting to a middle setting to a low setting. Like it would be 3 different things, and so they're named correctly. Like, so they did a lot of work to get everything 100% on all of his plugins. That's pretty cool, BlueCats, to do that, because who else deserves that other than Chris J? And it takes 2 people who have like-minded, goals in mind of what we should have available to us as tools for our digital production of music. They're like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's put this together, make it dope. Doper. Show assigned controls. Check that out. It's gonna take a minute to load. I'm guessing it's looking for my MIDI controller at this point. I just want to know what all these buttons do. I should have just read the manual. In fact, I could read the manual while I'm streaming, since obviously my streams are not getting a lot of attention at this point. I don't think anybody's watching the YouTube. and I've been streaming for like hours and hours. Perhaps my content in my streams have been not great. I'm just like rambling constantly. So this is probably hurting my level of ability to be productive, and I'm probably going to stop and then not stream while I look for these things. But just since I named the title something and I haven't done that yet, I'm going to do this patchwork thing later when I can totally focus, and I am going to do some stuff that the title of the stream says now. I haven't checked the Twitch comments. Perhaps I should. Oh crap, there's a beetle. Ah! Go away. I just got attacked by a beetle, or almost attacked. It was one of those big shiny green beetles. They're like that big, and if you piss them off they will sting you, and that shit is not a fun experience from what I heard. So that kind of distracted me. I was about to start doing something. Alright, so alright, first thing I want to try out is side pass to monoize the bass frequencies. So this is something that I would use in mastering. So I looked for stuff that I could use in mastering, and some of these things that I listed are mixing tools, but I still want to see what happens. And I want to push them to like levels of stuff that you definitely would not do in mastering, just because I want to do that. So at this point, if you're commenting on the stream, please spare me of insulting my intelligence, because I am doing some stuff that you would not normally do. Anybody viewing the Twitch? Let's find out. Oh, by the way, I'm using restream.io to stream on multiple platforms at the same time. It's really easy to configure. It took me like 5 minutes literally, and you can see how slow I am at doing things right now, so that was fast. It'll be under dashboard. I'm also new to streaming on Twitch and YouTube on the computer, so probably take me a while consistently doing this to like figure out where everything is and then just know. And then being distracted by a cat always helps. Be right back. I hope I start getting some viewers, because at a certain point I'll have to introduce my streaming audience to the cat. who oh, I just logged in as Pixelgasm. I'm on my other browser, that's why. By the way, I'm one of the creators of Pixelgasm. It's a collaborative group. We collaborate on music online, and been kind of going slow lately, but that's pretty cool stuff that happens. Looks like I got views, but probably not very many like viewers who viewed for more than a minute is my guess. There's a way to go to see if anybody's in the chat. Maybe my CPU won't get pushed anymore now that I configured OBS better. So I can check the chat on a computer instead of picking up the phone every time, because then I end up picking up the phone like twice per stream, and if nobody typed anything, then I don't have anything to respond to. So I think this stream ended up being just me babbling and talking about my situation with learning how to stream, and like the fact that streaming kind of makes it my like level of like workflow of doing stuff that I normally do different, probably because I'm constantly talking. Once I get this set up to where I can interact with people who comment, that should raise the quality of my streams, because then if I'm talking about mastering stuff, then people can ask me about something, or if I'm just rambling about stuff and something catches their attention and they're like, oh, can you talk more about that, then I can do that. I think this stream ended up being just oh, somebody gave me a thumbs up. That's nice. There's one watching now, and I'm not sure if that's me or a friend of mine who just like started watching and then went away from their computer just to be nice. Traffic on their streams. It says one person watching. I'm guessing that's me. Open another browser from my account. This is XEM plugin and processing that are not based on a bunch of things, and I did implement it on other instruments because I don't play guitar or bass, but having all those effects was fun. Oh, the new MB-7 was released like Yesterday or wait? Today is the 16th. It was released last month. Oh, I showed you a audio. Then I have to load that up. Well, let's do that. Damn it. Oh, I am having some lag. You could open all the plugin editors and close them all. Or you can change the slot size. That's pretty neato. Trying to look for where I increase the window size because that is annoying. But I did want to see if the FabFilter window size was also increased by 200%. Nope. So that thing that I changed that I can't recall where it was. Oh, zoom. There it is. I want that to be as small as possible. I probably need to set up a second monitor to speed up my workflow. I'm working outside on the balcony, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to bring another monitor outside. So I'm probably going to end the stream and consider it unsuccessful mastering, except for hopefully my mic worked okay. As far as like the title and everything, I did not do the stuff that I do once again. I kind of showed you what I'm going to do, and then I'll probably do that while I'm not streaming. But at least it showed you what I'm going to do is basically going to load the MB-7 within the Patchwork, and I'm going to load the Patchwork within the MB-7s, and I'm just going to put as many plugins in there as possible and see how many low latency ones I can run where it's just totally ridiculous, and then see what happens. My expectations is most likely very bad, but if I spent hours and hours configuring it, it could be pretty freaking awesome. And if I continue to build up Patchwork, like put a lot of time into it, I could have it configured really nicely to where it's basically runs my whole DAW, so that I'm running things in parallel. And I do know that I could just send things to the aux channels and sum them together within the DAW, but I believe that this Patchwork does it in a higher fidelity and implements the plugins probably better, like at the highest quality. I'm guessing that their late replies is, I think I've heard about it several times. I think it does something really cool that is like the first time it's been used. Reverb. The multi-effects plugin, so it can host your VSTs, and then it's 29 built-in effects, 2 nested feedback loops, include plugin slots. Okay, so you're feeding the effects loops into each other. And you got a whole slew of EQs and filters and stuff, with an integrated ducker and a sidechain input, ducking, delays, and reverbs. These are extremely vast tools. So if anybody's watching, hopefully you got some info, and hopefully BlueCats stuff has caught your interest. 8 taps patterns section and plugin slots. Two feedback loops with crossfeed and plugin slots. That sounds awesome. Tempo host synchronization. Then you're like delays and reverbs will be in sync, not BPM, with your DAW. Global stereo spread control. That's pretty neat. It probably increases the stereo width of each of your so it'll give you 8 plugin slots. I'm not sure if they run in parallel. Yeah, they got to. And then it has 2 feedback loop things. So I'm guessing that stereo spread increases the stereo width of all of them at the same time. That sounds dope. I recall looking into this actually recently, and I forgot about it. That usually happens with me. Like, I've been thinking about like getting to know these BlueCats things and configuring them really well for a long time. I just never put hours and hours and hours into it. No latency, it says. Control it protects your ears from the feedback loopage. That's one thing that you can do, those feedback loops in Ableton. A friend of mine has been doing that a lot in some really interesting ways, spacey blur, and he was doing it with aux channels and different ways you can configure Ableton. I'm sure he would have to like put compressors in there and manually control them, but this has, or put a brick wall filter on the master fade, but this will control the levels of the feedback with output brick wall limiters, and that's on each channel, and no latency. Full MIDI control, silent zipper free parameters update. That's important. Advanced response control and MIDI learn, so that makes it to where your MIDI controller, some VST plugins, like, you're not quite able to do your MIDI thing to where you turn the parameter and then you turn it on your MIDI controller and then it's mapped. This lets you do that, I believe. It makes that implemented within the plugin, so that on VSTs that you can't normally do that, now you can. No CPU load on idle, so I guess that means it basically operates like a VST3. I'm guessing that's different in some way. Customizable interface with transparency and zoom. Oh, I bet there's a transparency feature that I haven't found on this Patchwork also. That way you can see like what's behind it in the AW, or yeah. Copy paste the state of the plugin in between instances using the system clipboard. So control copy and then paste the state of the plugin to, so you can set up a fab filter, then go to another fab filter and paste it into it. Is that what that is? That's what I think that is. That's pretty freaking sick. And any sample rate supported. So I think I probably will spend some time learning this BlueCats stuff. I like that they implemented the ducker and the sidechain, with the ducking, the delays, and the reverbs, and the feedback loop channels. BlueCats has always been one of the companies that I wanted to get into their plugins and spend a lot of time learning them, but I just never get around to it. And honestly, I've had this like kind of vision of a project that I want to do, which I talked about here, where I'm going to just use a ton of plugins within there, as many as I can, where it's like retarded ridiculous, and then that will be my show. Yeah, but it'll probably take tons of time to set up to where it's like all set up nicely and ready to go and be played live. I have heard good things about the Axiom synth. I think I heard good things about the Destructor too. It has a randomized feature. Maybe? No, it can't. Oh, I gotta get this because I'm gonna be basically trying a bunch of different distortion techniques. Ooh. It is possible to import reference curves measured with the frequency analyzer to quickly match existing tones. So wait a second. It reacts to the instrument. It has an adaptive shaper. I wonder how it adapts. That looks like the ultimate distortion plugin, perhaps. FabFilter Saturn has a lot of capabilities too. There's a lot of great distortion plugins. One thing that I got a gripe about that I don't see here on the BlueCats stuff, and it might be built into it and they just didn't mention it. There's no mention of oversample, and whereas on the other hand, this DDMF plugin, the meta plugin, has 4x oversample, which means it runs through the process of playing the audio 4 times, and that way some plugins will play back differently, or they'll have artifacts happen randomly. But if you play it a bunch of times and then it sums them together, so that way wherever those little glitches are, it moves it out to what the average of what it'll be when you play it back several times. That's one thing that has made Kazrog K-Clip 3 the best clipper on the market, is it gives you a 32 oversample, and with clippers those artifacts are going to happen, especially when you're slamming something. And therefore that 32x oversample, I mean, that doesn't eliminate the artifacts, but it eliminates it pretty dang close to zero. I mean, we're not going to hear anything happening after it does that. It's going to be inaudible. It's basically every time it oversamples, and unless it glitches at the same spot on 2 different run-throughs of the audio, which is very unlikely. In fact, to distort at the same exact spot, yeah, very unlikely. So basically, it those little artifacts that happen every time it runs through it one more time, it cuts the volume in half. So do that 32 times, and boom, very close to zero. I mean, very close to negative infinity as far as like our ear is concerned. I do kind of want to just try out some of these AirWindows thingies on this track, since I did make the title about that, and I'm going to be doing that anyway. Might as well do a bit of that now. So if anybody's watching, basically just exploring some plugins that I did recently read about them or watch the videos and I might remember what they're doing, I might not. Try to jot down some notes. So let's check out this side pass. This is one thing that would be used very often in mastering as a side shaping tool, especially, I mean, well, most of the mixes that get sent to me are falling out of phase. In other words, the sides become louder than the mids at some point in the track, and then it falls out of phase. When people are mixing, it's like when the sides are big, it feels bigger, especially if you're using headphones. When you process it, when you use headphones, you probably don't notice the bad effects of it falling out of phase and what that does to your ears, especially if it's in like clubs or on big speaker systems. So side pass. So it's essentially just a cutoff. Really, I should be loading these into BlueCats, but I'm just extremely used to looking at this menu in Ableton rather than clicking the load a preset or load a VST and Patchwork. I'm not like familiar with it yet. I need to do it more. I need to spend more time doing it so it's a regular thing. So this basically just does the cutoff of the sides. Oh no, it monoizes the bass. So let's hear how it sounds when I use it. On this track. This is the same track that I've been streaming from Quasar. Let's go to a spot where there's the bass kick. I wonder what this cutoff goes up to. It looks like I don't have any viewers on Twitch. I don't have any viewers on YouTube. Oh, I have one viewer. Oh, that's cool. I'm essentially just learning about plugins right now. I talked about an idea that I have to implement BlueCats, Patchwork, and MB-7, and they also have this destructor I really want to look into, distortion and amp modeling, any kind of just clipping compression. Oh yeah, this would be so fun to put on Quasar's tracks because he wants me to slam them with like nasty and loud possible which isn't really something that I get asked to do within mastering. I've never been asked to do that, but I would do that to my own songs. And then this other one that is like a reverb with feedback loops. What was it called? Late replies. So I'm gonna look into that too. It's got a free demo. Definitely gonna get those. Spend some time configuring them. I'm gonna learn how to make my live streams a little bit better. I found this thing about AirWindows. It's beatdruid.com, and that's the dude who made AirWindows is Beat Druid on Twitch as well. He has a bunch of analog modular gear and he jams with it, which is cool. That's what he spends his money that he makes from making digital plugins on. He jams with analog gear. Distance and loud with possible addition of phase nudge, post reverb delay. Okay, see, these are like combinations of stuff that I'm gonna look at and learn and then try to come up with my own weird combinations. So this is one that interests me. Subs only and slew only. So you put them in parallel to the dry signal and blend it, Wait, what? I thought what I thought these would do together would be like have a curve off to where when you sum them back together you get the clean signal, like with no difference. But I was wrong in my assumption. Density, high-end vocal exciter. So basically I want to use, like I want to try out all of his exciters and saturators and distortions and put them on the master bus on this, slam the hell out of them, and then see if any of them would be nice to use or combination of them to use, and then start to listen for, like, say one sounds good in a certain frequency area, then configure my BlueCats MB-7 so that I'm putting it on just a small band here and there. So that's gonna be fun, but it's definitely not something that would normally happen in mastering. So basically with this all the way up, then a lot more of the bass stuff gets turned into mono, and you can hear the difference. So what I would want to do is, what do I need to do? Well, one thing I could do is oh no, I did grab the wrong thing. I'm going to use the ozone imager and just take a look at when I boost that cutoff, like how much it's removing, like how far up is it removing the sides. This will show it too. It's pretty accurate with the change that to mid side. And let's check out the sides. To do this well, I'm going to want to loop a small section of the audio just so that I hit Control+L and it loops that little thing. This is just going to play that loop over and over, and I'm going to look at the sides. I'm going to look at how far this is rolling off the sides, because like the best practice as far as I know is to basically push it down. It should go to mono by the time it's down to 90 Hertz. So see where it is now. So that's where it is, clean. That's with no processing. And then bam, that slams it. So I don't want to do that much. Jeez. So it doesn't look like it's a very steep cutoff. Okay, it kills stuff way up there. Kills stuff up, like up here. So let's see if we can. So it's a very gradual, sloping cutoff. So that's very natural sounding. I might use this in combination with some of my other mid-side shaping techniques. I kind of like my techniques that I've developed already though, for mid-side shaping. yeah, that's useful if I didn't already have an extremely awesome mid-side technique that I implement that works better than that naturally sounding low Q slope that's all super smooth sounding and natural sounding, and I like stuff that does a little more. That's the thing about AirWindows, is it makes things very simple, and his theory is the more simple the better, and usually I agree, but sometimes overcomplicating things is a good thing. So it looks like this density excites the higher end and it leaves the lows alone. Unless I'm misunderstanding that brief explanation. Let's see what I put in my notes file about density, because I know it's already on my list of ones to try. Like density. Oh, the guy who liked hard vacuum liked density. Those are supposed to be mixing tools. So I'm gonna do what you're not supposed to. He didn't say that he was gonna like show up in front of my computer and tell me that I can't. In fact, he gave me the plugins and told me I can do whatever I want with them. But I wanted to try this Hermit Pass. What does that do? Oh, it's a high pass filter for mastering. Let's just see how it acts. I guess I can use this again for frequency analyzer. I like to have visual cue as well as hear it at the same time. For some reason, I like seeing that accurate visual representation while I hear it. Helps me train my ears. In some cases, it can also help you trick your ears, but usually is helpful. In fact, sometimes I make adjustments to things with my headphones off, like just looking at the visual cues, because I like to rest my ears a lot. It looks like it can invert the cutoff. Because this is, wait. This is clean. And then look at what happens to this low area when I invert the cutoff. Watch it go up. Boom. That adds a ton of energy to the area in between 10 and 20 hertz, which I'm not gonna lie, most mastering engineers try to remove as much of that as possible because it's inaudible, but adding energy there does some stuff that is necessary for a lot of styles of music, especially styles that involve bass that you want to feel, because putting that inaudible stuff in there makes the audible part shake your ear, like shake your body more. In fact, even just the inaudible part alone will like make your chest shake. So when you go to a club and you hear that bass, like it's actually vibrating the whole area. You can't hear it, but you can feel it. And then with the cutoff, so I'm interested in what the slope does. And it's kind of neat how he just gives you these 1 to 0 values. That way you have to use your ears. You know, you're not like looking at where it's starting to go off and like how fast it's sloping. You know what I mean? So that's like the most gradual low slope, small Q, and then inverted. Here where it's doing to that bass, that's adding the sub energy that probably this track needs, but not too much though. We'll just add a little bit. Let's hear it at bypass again, or bypass the cutoff, I mean. What happens when the cutoff is at the 0.5 and the slope is adjusted? Should be nothing. Oh no, it's something. Why is that? Oh, I'm guessing maybe when it's at 0.5 then the cutoff is like set to 40 hertz or something. Or 50 hertz maybe. So with low slope, there's less of a cut. So with the low slope and then inverted, there's less of a boost. And then with the high slope, that's like the most you can add to the subs. That seems like a pretty neat little tool. I'll probably implement that in mastering. It was intended for mastering. Yeah, it is. Great. Awesome. Thank you, Chris J. again. Oy vey. Retains every possible bit of the tonality while reshaping the extreme lows to trim the lowest frequencies. It's sound balancing, not louding or not making loud or ing. So yeah, I heard no changes in the mids and highs when I was adjusting that high pass filter. And a lot of people don't know that even maximum phase, linear phase EQs with high pass filters, when you do that, it is changing everything above where like even where the slope is at 0. So here's at 0 and then it starts to slope down. All this stuff that's at 0 because of that slope that's going down is getting changed. And what he did is made it to where this stays exactly the same. If I can remember like his explanation briefly, that's what I remember. I forget what he did to make it do that. But yeah, with maximum linear phase EQ, there is a change there. And, you know, like, so there's a reason why FabFilter Pro Q2 pretty much fails as you're mastering high pass filter, which most mastering engineers use high pass filters as often as they can, if they're trying to push the loudness as much as they can, especially. Or some of them argue that those low frequencies that we can't hear clutter up the audio. It adds energy to all the audible signal as well, and that's important to keep, in my opinion. I completely stopped using high pass filters. I'm against them. I think that people who use them are incorrect, and 99 out of 100 mastering engineers would argue with that, probably, but I think they're dumbasses. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and end this live stream, and perhaps I'll come back tomorrow, maybe later today. I still have on YouTube, so that's cool. Thanks for watching, whoever you are. That means at least it caught somebody's interest.